Welcome to Parenting Different, a place where real adoption stories come to life. My name is Anna Bernacki, and this is the Parenting Different podcast. Hi, Devon. Thank you so much for being with us today on the Parenting Different podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your story with us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up being connected to adoption.
Yeah, so my husband and I were married in September of 2022, and we decided that we wanted to be foster parents pretty quickly. He had a passion for it, and so did I. He worked in a orphanage in Jamaica and also spent time working at a summer camp for orphans in China. And then I always had a passion for foster care, so we got together and decided it was something that we both wanted to do. We were kind of already parenting together because he has a daughter from his first marriage. So we started the licensing process that November. And then we were officially licensed in May of 2023. We took our first placement of a baby girl. She was 7 weeks old, and we brought her home from the NICU that August.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we ended up fostering her for 15 months, just about, until she went to live with her dad's family. But sort of like midway in her case, I just had a feeling, and the story is kind of crazy, but I just had a feeling. And so I texted her caseworker and I said, hey, if our girl's mom were to have another baby that needed care, you guys would call us first, right? And the caseworker was like, yes, absolutely. That's how we normally do things. But it's good to know that like you would be willing and able to step in should, another baby be born that needs a family. So kind of squared that away. And then the next day we got a phone call. And it was a phone call from a person with the county, who only ever texts. So I was kind of like, uh-oh, what's going on here? So I answered the phone and she said, hold on, I have to put the caseworker on the line. So then internally I'm panicking. I'm like, oh gosh, both of them want to talk to me. What's happening? What's going on? And they said, you're never going to believe this. It's not a sibling, but it's a cousin. And he was born yesterday and was left at the hospital, and he needs a family to bring him home. Like, would you go get him? And so,
Wow.
yeah, it's a crazy story. Crazy story. So we said yes. He ended up needing to spend a little bit of time in the hospital. We brought him home when he was 13 days old, so he was almost 2 weeks old. And we ended up adopting him this past May. So he was adopted when he was 11 months old from foster care. And yeah.
That is an insanely fast case for foster care.
Super fast.
Insane.
Yeah, when we were kind of on the fast track. Yeah, very much the fast track.
Yeah, that's wild. Almost unheard of. I thought we had an 18-month case, and that's even fast, 18 months. But that is, and then our other case was 5.5 years. So
wow.
It's
I can imagine. Yeah,
two completely different. We got all the kids within 5 months, but the two separate cases just took wildly different times. So that is crazy. So you said you started out as foster parents. Was there a desire to adopt, or did that just kind of fall into place?
Yeah, I mean, when my husband and I originally had talked about it, we were certainly open to adoption if, a kiddo needed it, and if there was kind of no chance that, they were going to be able to go back to mom and dad. Our two cases were very different from most foster care experiences because our kiddos' parents were never really super involved. So it wasn't like we had experience with, going to visits or, having contact with bio family members. And it was pretty clear from our son's case very early on that it was going to be an adoptive situation. So it did kind of fall into our laps that way. And I just want to say, I know that the goal of the system is
Sure.
reunification, right? I know that. We all know that as foster parents.
Right.
But there are cases where, they need to be adopted. So we were happy to step in and love him that way and make him part of our family.
Yeah, for sure. What was kind of the biggest, I think, eye-opening thing as you went through the process? What was your biggest like wow moment of, it could be good, bad, ugly, like you're just your biggest wow moment and maybe biggest lesson learned going through that adoption process?
Yeah, I think just the length of time, and we talked about how an 11-month case is like ridiculously fast. And we actually had a voluntary termination of parental rights for him that
Mhm.
happened in July, and it took us until January to get a hearing to kind of like confirm that. And we're in the state of
Oh my goodness.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, so in the state of Pennsylvania, you have a 30-day period to where you can change your mind. So there was kind of that a little bit of angst just because you never know, what's going to happen. But those 30 days kind of came and went, and um, it's even though we were fast tracked, it's kind of crazy to think about. Like it took us from July to January just to like confirm what had already been, signed on a piece of paper, and then from
Wow.
January to May to have everything complete for the adoption.
Yeah, that is a long time. I mean, it's a short time, but from voluntary relinquishment, like that's a long time
Hmm.
to have just paperwork stuck, and because
Yeah.
at that point that's what it is, it's just
Yep.
paperwork.
Yep.
So that is tough. What was something, as a adoptive mom, and as you went through, obviously foster mom first, your new adoptive mom, but what is kind of something that you're like, from your perspective, that was one of the hardest things for you to wrap your mind around or to navigate? What was kind of your biggest challenge through all of that?
Honestly, I look at my son and I just love him so much. And there are times where I have to battle like these internal feelings of like, I look at him and I'm like, how could you not want to be a part of this? And there's times where I'm sad of like, you're missing this, you're his
Yeah.
laugh. He's such a ham. He's hilarious. Like his belly laugh is just the best thing ever. And he's such a happy boy, and he's, growing so fast and learning and exploring. So for me, it's hard to wrestle with some of those feelings of like, his biological family missing out on a great kid. And then I kind of have to step back and reconcile with myself of, you don't know what it's like to walk in those shoes. And his mom did a very brave thing, because she realized that she wouldn't be able to provide him, the life that he deserved. And so there's a lot of back and forth and pulling in my heart emotionally,
Yeah.
because it's tough. You look at this beautiful baby and you just wonder what was going on at the time. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
been tough.
And I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot. And because there is a huge push right now, and I think it's so important to talk about the birth families and the birth mothers, and there's two sides to it, right? Like they love their kids, and what were the circumstances that drove them to that? Because a mother doesn't just walk away from her child, right?
Right.
That's just not in our nature. And so, what were the circumstances surrounding it to cause that to happen? And I think so often we villainize the birth parents and say, oh, well, they're just a horrible person. But what were the circumstances that drove them to that? And that's a hard thing to wrestle with. And I know, like, I'm adopted myself. And so sometimes I have a hard time wrestling with that. And I was talking to another adoptee the other day of realizing, like, you almost have to change the perspective of, instead of, it was also, he was abandoned at the hospital, or left at the hospital, I should say. And you almost have to change the mindset of, from the victim mindset of, well, why didn't they care and leave and just walk away, or what caused them
Mm-hmm.
to walk away? And that's something that's really, really hard as mothers who love our kids so, so much. That's a
Yeah.
hard one to wrestle with, and really, especially, like, I'm assuming no contact
No.
right now, or
No.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's tough too,
Yeah.
because at least, like, you think they'd want updates or want to know, but again, is it so painful for them that they can't handle that?
Right.
And
Right.
that's really hard.
Yeah.
And then too, like, and I'm sure you've had these thoughts, how do you explain that to your child someday?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, he's almost 14 months old. You know, we're the only family that he's ever known. We're the only home he's ever known. And I hate to think about, you know, those conversations that are going to come, because he's always been so loved and so wanted, ever since we found out about him. And so I just, as a mother, I want to protect him from those feelings. And I know they're going to come, there's going to be conversations, and, you know, I'm certainly not trying to shield him from his
Right.
story. But at the same time, as a mother, I wish I could take away any pain or any hurt that he's going to feel someday when he's old enough to understand. I don't want him to have the pain of feeling rejected or unwanted. And, you know, I just want him to know how loved and how wanted he is.
Yeah. And that is a tough one, because those feelings, unfortunately, are going to be there. You know, there is such a loss. Adoption always begins with loss, right? And so there is that huge loss, and we want to protect. But I think the hardest part I've had to rationalize in my brain is, be in our attempt to protect, we there are just parts of life we can't protect them from,
Mm-hmm.
and it sucks.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sucks that we can't protect them from some of the harsh realities of life, but we can also turn it into, and I think this is one of those really hard things, is like the beauty and the pain of adoption. So many people
Mm-hmm.
want to focus on the beauty of it, and it starts out really ugly, and there are some really, really ugly pieces of it, like this, where you're going to have a child that just has such a hard time understanding why. And maybe not, maybe he will grow up and be like, nope, it's good, I'm in a good home, I'm fine. There are adoptees that are like that, but there is still, I'm sure at some point, there's going to be that wrestling of why,
Yep.
what happened and why. And so, yes, there's beauty, and he's in a loving home, and he's well cared for, and he will never know some of the pain of whatever his birth mother tried to protect him from. But at the same time, it's just that both and, right?
Right.
Of, there's so many different aspects to it. And I think you are so wise in acknowledging that, but also loving him in such a great way that hopefully he will always know that he's so wanted and loved, and never have to wonder where he fits in, right?
Yeah.
He's always knows that you are home,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where he belongs.
Yeah.
um do you still have an open foster license? Are you still going to continue? Would you adopt again?
Yeah, yeah. So our license is still open. We were due for renewal in April, so we hadn't adopted him yet. He was adopted in May, so we're still
Okay.
open. We did take a pause from fostering, just to kind of settle in and, you know, enjoy his adoption.
Yeah.
We are kind of in conversation about when to reopen. It's definitely something that we're still passionate about in terms of foster care. We also sit in the tension of like the unknown, and the very real possibility that our son will have a sibling or a cousin
Mm,
born that needs to come into care, unfortunately. And so while that is kind of a what if scenario, it's also something that we've kind of talked about and prepared for in the event that that does happen. Because now that he's adopted legally, we would be considered kin to that baby.
sure.
So that's kind of on our minds as well. So we're in the talking phase of when it looks right for our family to reopen and what that would look like. But we are definitely still feeling called to foster care, and again, if the need to adopt came about again, we would certainly be open to that.
Yeah. That's so interesting too. Like, how do you, yeah, do you hold that place for a potential family
Mhm.
member? Do you fill it? Then what happens if one is born? Yeah, that's a tough one for
It's very
sure.
tough. It's very tough because we're dealing with two different mothers here, who
Right.
unfortunately have a history with Office of Children and Youth, and so there's a lot of unknown there, and it's so hard because we would love for him to have as many safe connections with his birth family as we can. And so we do kind of want to hold that space in case the need arises. But then there's the flip side of, well, there are children who are in need right now. So
Yeah.
that's been really, really tough to kind of navigate that and reconcile and wrestle and talk about, because it's all just one huge what if. You just don't know.
Yeah, that is really, really tough
Mhm.
because, and we were kind of in that position too, where we actually did have a sibling born 11 months after one. And it was one of those things, it was the hardest decision I've ever made, but we couldn't take him because I couldn't. I had
Mhm.
4 kids. One was still screaming like multiple hours a day. Like we had not sleeping at night. And I'm like, I can't do another newborn.
Yeah.
Like I knew my limits and I wouldn't be a good parent to anyone. And still to this day, I struggle with that,
Yeah.
not having that sibling there. But it wasn't doable. I look
Mhm.
back at that season and there's no way we would have survived.
Right. Right.
No way
Yeah.
we would have survived with that.
Yep.
Um, so it's a really tough it's a tough place to be,
Mhm.
and knowing when to say yes and when you as a parent just have to say no. And it's awful to divide up families, but in some situations there's not, like, you just can't,
Right.
and
Right.
that's a really tough one to wrestle with for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
So you have an older child in your
We
home.
do.
How has that been, having a biological child and then also the foster, and how, you said it's a girl, right?
Yes. Yes. Our daughter's
Okay.
11. Yep.
How has she been through this whole process? Like, how has this been with her?
Yeah, she loves her brother, and she is the best big sister ever. And his face lights up when he sees her, so they have a
Aw.
really special bond. And she has welcomed him with open arms, and she's kind of even mentioned like, when are we going to start fostering again?
Oh,
She's
wow.
like, I'm ready, and we're like, all right, well, me and Dad have to talk about it a little bit more, but yeah. And when our girl left, we were all grieving,
Sure.
and that was hard. That was really, really, really hard for our family, to have to say goodbye, and just the circumstances around her leaving our home. We were kind of under the impression that we'd at least have a little bit of contact with her, being that, we
Mm,
have her family member in our home, and it hasn't worked out that way. So that's been tough as well, because when she left, we didn't think that it would be, a goodbye forever type situation. So I think
yeah,
we're all kind of processing that grief still. Um,
yeah,
and I think that was it was absolutely a hard goodbye. And so I think for our daughter, she's still kind of processing through that. And there's times where we talk about her, right? And it's not like
of
she's
course, yeah,
erased from our family, but there's certainly similarities in our son. And we the way he crunches up his nose when he smiles, it's like we see her. So it's a sweet reminder, but there are days where it's a painful reminder too, that she's not here, and they at this point don't know each other. So it's been tough.
yeah.
It's been tough.
Have you had any direct contact with any members of that family, or has it all been through caseworker?
Yeah, so the babies are cousins on their mom's side. So she and our girl went to live with her dad's family. So
Okay.
yeah, we had contact with them. We have, even after she left, we tried to maintain contact, and it just wasn't received. So, but we had interacted with them. We had contact with them. She had visitation with them. They live out of state, so we would meet halfway for drop offs and pickups. So yeah, we were definitely in contact with them. So it's kind of disappointing
Okay.
that has ended.
Yeah, that is. That's really unfortunate.
Hmm.
So with your daughter being in the home and going through the loss, I think this is something that so many people are concerned about with foster care is, well, it's going to hurt my child.
Hmm.
They can't understand. They're not going to process. When they're grown, I'll do it. I don't want to do it now.
Hmm.
What would you say to that, having walked through this and experienced it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of like we talked about, like we want to protect our kids from any harm or hurt that comes their way. And, life doesn't work out that way. And so, yes, our daughter has been exposed to hurt and hardship that I wouldn't want her to go through. But we are a Christian family. We believe in God and Jesus, and when we're having these hard conversations with her, we kind of always fall back on our faith of, Jesus wants us to love. And sometimes when we follow Jesus and we obey what Jesus tells us to do, it hurts a little bit and it costs us something. And so my husband and I have talked about this extensively. While there is loss and there's hurt, and she has had to endure some things that most kids don't, because they don't love a sibling and then watch them leave. We believe that the benefit of it, of learning to walk in obedience and love even when it's costly, will outweigh the hurt. And any hurt or sadness that we experience, God's just going to take that and use it for his good and his glory. So we have those conversations with her often of, following
Yeah.
Jesus isn't always easy.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, so often we want to put our kids in a little bubble,
Mm-hmm.
and in protecting them, because I grew up this way. I grew up in a bubble. I knew nothing outside of the way I was raised, and um grew up very conservative in a very conservative Christian family. I was homeschooled. Like, when I say bubble, I mean bubble. Like, I didn't know anything outside. And I think entering the world of foster care opened my eyes to a world that I didn't even know existed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew it, but I didn't.
Absolutely.
And seeing the brokenness and the pain and the hurt, and even just you hear of family cycles, but I never could wrap my head around that until beginning foster care, and I could see those generational cycles.
Yep.
And I think, again, I don't have the experience because I don't have biological children, so I don't have necessarily that experience, but I think if I did, I would want them to experience these things and see the hurt in the world for multiple reasons. One, because they are in the protection of my home. And so this is a perfect time for them to see what is the world really like,
Mm-hmm.
where we have these rules and these guidelines, we have these standards because of what is out there,
Right.
and not because we're controlling, we are, whatever reason that kids may think. But we have these reasons, or these rules and these guidelines, to protect you, but also in teaching them how to love. And I think it's so easy to love people who look like us and act like us and talk like us.
Absolutely.
But that love, like that true biblical love of Jesus, he didn't hang out with people that looked and acted and talked like him.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Yep.
He didn't just go to church and hang out with those people. He went and put himself in the center of hurting and broken people. And so teaching our kids that is so crucial for their own development and growth, I think. And yes, we want to protect, but we still can. We can still protect our children and not shelter them.
Right.
And I think there's a difference between sheltering
difference.
and protecting.
Yeah.
And sometimes those two get mixed.
I agree. Yeah, definitely a difference between the two.
Yeah. So I think, to at least, and again, I can't speak because I don't have biological children, but if I did, I think I would say to the people who are like, we gotta wait, we don't want to do this right now, we'll wait till they're older, do it.
Yeah.
Go all in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there going to be hurt? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is. But then you can teach them how to work through it and how to love.
Yeah. And the timing's never going to be perfect.
Right.
The timing's never going to be great. You're going to get a call at the worst possible time when you have a million other things. But I always just come back to, well, the timing's never perfect for a child to be removed from their home either.
Absolutely.
So you got to just jump in and do it.
Yes.
And God will meet you there. He'll meet you in that space of obedience.
Yes. And I think this is something that I've always had to remind myself too, is I chose this even when it's really hard. I chose this. I chose to walk this with these children. These kids didn't choose it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't choose to be raised in a different family. They didn't choose, no matter how an adoptee ends up in their home, whether it's infant adoption, from another country, whether it's through foster care, no adoptee chooses this.
Right.
And so, but I did. So I can then sit there with them and walk through that hurt with them, even when it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important to keep in mind, that we can choose this. They never did.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't deserve, just for our own comfort, they don't deserve to be ignored or validated in a way. Maybe we don't think that we're not validating their grief, but to be able to sit in that with them.
Yeah.
We signed up for this.
Yes, we did.
And so it's so important.
Yep.
So important to remember.
Yes.
So, well, this has been absolutely incredible. Do you have any last thoughts or anything that you...
No, just if you're considering pursuing foster care, it's tough, but it's so worth it. The kiddos, they need safe, loving adults. And so if you're on the fence, just jump in. You can do it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I have loved chatting with you. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us, and we will talk again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been so fun.
Awesome.